Live only on his own, the Ring 6, Teofimo Lopez, the Brooklyn-born king of 140, looks to retain his world title as Shakur Stevenson steps up to become a 4-division world champion. Lopez versus Stevenson, January 31st. Click the link in the description to buy now.
"15 years ago, I was on film sets. I was an extra. That's what I was doing 15 years ago. Obviously, IFL started 15 years ago, but that was the early days of it. And the boxing didn't kick into it till a year later. But 15 years ago, I was doing 12 hours on Holby City, EastEnders, a few different adverts. So I think when me and James Helder uploaded the first video in 2010, did I think this was going to happen? No, absolutely not. I think the best plan about IFL in the early days is that there wasn't a plan. Like, I didn't think, right, well, after 2 years we're going to do this, after 5 years, I didn't know. So I think that kind of benefited us, hindered us as well, but I think that at that point, not knowing what was happening 1 year to the next helped at that start. But yeah, I didn't think back then, 15 years ago, that this would be still going on now, 15 years later. There's actually two answers to this. So me knowing IFL, this was a thing that I wanted to continue, because a lot of our early interviews were all based in reality television, which we didn't cover a boxing event, I think, for a good 7-8 months. And there were points, like after interviews, where I thought, wow, like we've done something. We hadn't, but back then, like, I remember interviewing Amy Charles from The Only Way is Essex, and I remember like walking outside and like high-fiving James, going, can't believe we just done that. And like, but that's what it was then. That was how, like, we thought we'd like done something then, and this was after like a year or so or whatever. But with the boxing, I don't really know where the point was. I can't remember, or I can't think of the point where I thought, yeah, this is something. This is not just us putting on YouTube videos. There's something in this. And don't forget, there was points where like we could have, or nearly, kind of gave it up and thought, like, how does this earn any money, or how does this turn into anything? But then things happened, things changed, and here we are, 2025, 15 years later. To just focus on boxing, that transition happened really gradually. So for the first 2 years or 3 years, we were still doing the other stuff, and the boxing just kind of went like that, and we kind of then probably paid less attention to the original stuff we were doing because there was so much boxing. And also back then, nobody was doing it. It wasn't like the field we are now, where there's, I don't know, per show, there's probably 30 or 40 different YouTubers there. So there was a lot more, and it was new to the broadcasters. It was a new way of watching boxing, interviews and behind the scenes. I think it took a good 2 years. I think the first year, we were a bit here and there with stuff. I think it took 2 years before we then committed to being at every show we could, which wasn't every week, but I reckon there was at least 2 weekends out of the month that we would do this. And we're not earning any money back then as well, so it was difficult to do. Like, you're travelling up to Liverpool, Manchester, hotels, trains, etc. It wasn't easy to do when nothing's coming back. So I think a couple of years before, like, we probably realised that there is something in this if we keep going. We would like get a hotel covered, like Matchroom would cover a hotel for us, and we'd think we're benefiting, which we're not, because all we're doing is not losing money. But for 5 years, from 2010 to 2014, 15, like, there was no revenue coming in. I don't know why that is, by the way. It's probably because we didn't really know correctly how to monetize things, and sponsorship wasn't a thing. Like, the way sponsors now attach themselves to not just YouTube videos, but everything, that wasn't a thing then. Like there was no concept of, oh, this brand going on here, and that wasn't a thing. People weren't doing that. I was a big boxing fan. I obviously spent a lot of time the year before with Ricky Hatton, but just in general, me as a fan, I was a huge boxing fan. Would I call myself a hardcore boxing fan? No, but I still wouldn't call myself a hardcore boxing fan now. It does change the way you look at boxing because you're in and around the scene 24/7. You're around the people that you used to probably watch on TV, etc. But I don't think it's necessarily a good thing for me. I think it's probably knowing about boxing, knowing about the business. It's probably made me not love it as much, like watching it, because you kind of know stuff, if that makes sense. Oh, who believed in IFL? Do you know what? In boxing, the promoters did, like Hearn did, and what Frank did, because they used to, kind of those early days used to help us with stuff, even like I said, with a hotel and that, like, and travel and stuff like that. They knew that this was something back then, like 14, 15 years ago. They kind of saw that from the start, not just those two, but just Matchroom and back then Queensbury, or they kind of knew that IFL was of some value and this is something, even if maybe at certain times we didn't. I'm talking like at the very start, 14, 15 years ago. Massively naive about the industry because for years, I probably still am now, but it's like we know more and we've seen more. So like I said to you, it comes back to what I said about making you probably not love the sport as much because you're kind of involved in some way in the sport. So massively naive. Like I'd be around, and bear in mind, I've been in cars with Eddie Hearn, like for 15 years, where he's just openly having conversations with, like, making deals and stuff, and listening to all that stuff firsthand is crazy. But I remember, like, somebody asked Eddie Hearn a question about who he trusted in boxing, and then he said me in there, and he said that Kugan sat with me, like in my office, in the car, multiple times, but I know that those conversations don't leave the car or the office. So I listened to that, and it was kind of like, I kind of like that comment, because that just shows kind of our relationship with a lot of people in boxing, not just Hearn, but he just made that comment. But that aspect of it is what IFL's built on. The fact that what he said there is quite accurate, and that's not just to Hearn, that's to many people, and who could vouch what I've said is accurate. Abso-fucking-lutely. Yes, I would. Would I have done things in the same way? Yeah, do you know what? I wouldn't change anything, because you take one piece out of that jigsaw and I'm not here today doing this, do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't change anything. I think any experiences that I've had that haven't worked out has happened for whatever reason. Yeah, I literally wouldn't regret anything. We wanted to do behind the scenes on films, and we wanted to film, like, which is, EPK they call it. So we wanted to go on film sets and, like, do interviews with the cast and put out, like, behind the scenes footage of stuff to do in film and music. James had a background in music. I had a semi-background in film. It's like, that's what we'll do. So that's what the early people go to, the early oldest tab on our YouTube channel, and they'll see all that. And some of it very poorly filmed, some of it with really bad sound, some of it really kind of raw footage. But that's kind of the early days. And I like the fact that all that stuff's on there as a reminder of kind of what we used to do. The first person that really helped IFL TV or IFL London was Mickey Norcross from Towie, who passed away a couple of years ago, because he was the one that allowed us into that scene to be able to run freely and get all our content, etc. And that was for a whole year. That's before boxing. So he's somebody that I really credit from the start of just from being friends, just roam about. So we used to turn up to, like, the Sugar Hut on a Friday night, me and James, stone cold sober, obviously, like, which is crazy with being like somewhere like the Sugar Hut, and I'd be in my 20s then, late 20s then, and we'd go there, stay the whole night, stone cold sober, just going around interviewing people in there. It's crazy. And he was like, just do what you want. And if we didn't know someone, he'd go, right, you got to do an interview of Kugan. What's it for? Just do it, blah, blah. So we had some great content from the start. So he's somebody that I really kind of give credit to. In boxing, the person actually that really helped us out at the start was Jane Couch, former 5-time world champion who I'm friends with. She opened up a lot of doors. Like, she was the first one actually that introduced me to Frank Warren. She was the first one that introduced me to Eddie Hearn at a prize fighter show. She opened so many doors for us to get our foot in. So she was actually, at that point, I say Mickey Norcross for the initial reality stuff, but Jane Couch was the one that, opened all them doors for us at the start. Like I said, with both them promoters. Yeah, but I'm a bit still like that now. Do you know, like, and I shouldn't be, but I'd be like somebody, who was it the other day? I interviewed Thierry Henry the other day, and like, it was given to me on a plate, and I was going to, like, I was saying to Colin, I was going, I don't think I could do this. He's just going, shut up, shut up. I was going, no, I don't think I could do this. So sometimes in situations, not just because it was Thierry Henry, but sometimes in situations, I am a little bit like hold backish. It happened with Alexander Usyk. We was at the Usyk Fury fight, and this was the day of the weigh-in. He was just in a room, and it was actually our Irish colleague Colin that actually said to me, just go in there and ask him. I was like, no. I said, leave him. He'll do it. Just go in there and ask him. And this is like 14, 15 years on, and I'm going, nah, it's the wrong time. Like, he's not the right person to poach. And he went, I'm telling you, go in there. So I walked into the room and I said, Alexander, have you got like 30 seconds? And he went, okay, 30 seconds. But I think that part of me is, I don't want to lose that part of me. Like, I sometimes wish I was a little bit more forthcoming, and I can be to a certain extent, but that holding back is part of me. So I don't really regret those things, or me being like that. Did the boxing media look down on us? I'd say, look, I've been friends with a lot of the written press, because it was all basically the written press, the broadcaster, and then us. So I'd say at the start, they was a bit like, basically, who are these? You know, if I think that tag has become non-relevant now, but back then, I felt like the boxing writers, and some of them, like I said to you, in the end, I got on with everyone, because I think they saw us over a consistent amount of time being, not just being a flash in the pan, that we was at everything and kind of we built relationships. But initially, the writers were just used to them in a press conference and them sitting around a fighter, and then suddenly, like, there's us at the back there waiting with a camera, and they're like who are these guys? But I don't think they looked down. I think it was something new. So there's 2 times. This is the first 2 times IFL ever made any money. It's great. So we got a Google AdSense check, which was £396, right? An actual check, right? Got it. So I've rung James, and I'm like, mate, you never guess what? He's like, what? I said, like, just been sent a check for 400 quid. He's like, shut up. I went, yeah. So I'll send you 200 quid. Do you know what I mean? So that was like amazing. That was like 400 quid. And this is after about 3 years. 3 years, and that was the first check. I'd love to find that check somewhere. But the second one was, so Froch Groves was sponsored by Betway, yeah? And they come to us, I don't know how it happened, and said, how would you fancy having your, our, which is we know now as an ident, but just the Betway logo flash up before your videos? I was like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, I suppose we could work something. I thought they was going to give us like free merchandise, like, do you know, like a sweater, like a Betway sweater, or maybe like a voucher to go in there. And they're like, yeah, we'll pay you. And I was like, all right, yeah. I was like, how much? There's like $2,000. I was like, I genuinely thought it was a joke. I was like, $2,000? What? Yeah, how long we got to put it on there for? A week? Just literally Betway to flash up at the end. I said, we got to do anything else? She went, no. I said, that's it? we'll get $2,000 for that. They went, yeah. I was like, so you can imagine my phone call to James now. I'm like, guess what? Oh, what are you going to pay us $2,000? No, this can't be right, this can't be right. So we did that, and it was the first sponsor that ever went on IFL, was Betway. And yeah, we got paid £2,000 back then. Back then, by the way, everyone, for any potential sponsors, this is in 2010. But $2,000 was amazing. It was like literally, and they paid, do you know what it was as well? Like they paid us before like the week was out, and we'd done some mad numbers on that week anyway. So whatever it was, they got their money's worth for $2,000 at the time. I can't name the fighter, but this is in lockdown. People might be able to work it out. So this fighter fought on a card. I was told I was getting an interview after the fight, didn't. So I slept in, because the hotel was all closed off. I stayed in the lobby of a hotel for 18 hours, right? From the moment I was told that I was going to get it tomorrow, up until whatever, I stayed in that one place where I knew that they would have to at some point come down. And I didn't get it. Like, there's people on my team that will put themselves in places where they're not welcome, but they maybe shouldn't be. And it's not always great etiquette to do this, but sometimes when we're chasing content, we would. And like the boys that work for me have put themselves in certain situations where it could be quite, I don't know how to word this, but it could be quite a volatile situation. But they're put there in the name of getting content. And I think ultimately, like, people get that, but also when you're not comfortable around fighters, or not familiar with fighters, should I say, then putting yourself in those situations with people that you don't know is interesting. But I don't mind that kind of attitude, but just sometimes it's, those situations have been a little bit heated and volatile. Right, I know the answer to this. The first interview I ever did where this was the first interview at IFL, or IFL London back then, that got nationwide press, was an interview I'd done with an Arsenal footballer back then called Jack Wilshere, who was like the Arsenal golden kid at the time. And he was at a Frank Warren show. I was fortunate, because footballers are really funny. They don't do interviews, and they don't let you talk about kind of current stuff. That's always been like a blanket ban over doing this kind of media. So I was surprised at this time, which would have been 13 years ago, Jack Wilshere was like the main Arsenal talent in comparison to kind of a Bukayo Saka now. So I've gone up to him, done this interview, and I asked him a question at the end, a bit like a fanboy. I said, will you do me a favour? And he said, what's that? And I said, will you promise to stay at Arsenal forever? And he said, yes, I will. Next day, this is everywhere. This is on TalkSport. This is in every national newspaper. Jack Wilshere says he'll stay at Arsenal forever. Some of them quoted, some of them didn't. And if they didn't quote, they were told about it anyway, because I think TalkSport were talking about it, and I heard it. And they were saying on there, oh, Jack Wilshere apparently has committed his whole career to Arsenal. I don't know where this is from. So I've rung TalkSport and I've told them, I said, this is from IFL London. My name's Kugan. I was one. So they got me on it to explain to Richard Keys and Andy Gray. But that moment, and when I was going through the 75 top videos of IFL, that one, I mean, it done loads of views. It done like nearly 500,000 views. But that one for me was like the personal moment, and people still talk about that video now.
Live only on his own, the Ring 6, Teofimo Lopez, the Brooklyn-born king of 140, looks to retain his world title as Shakur Stevenson steps up to become a 4-division world champion. Lopez versus Stevenson, January 31st. Click the link in the description to buy now.